Welcome back to Hot Takes and Deep Dives, and I am here with Bianca Del Rio, who New York Magazine has called the most powerful drag queen in the world. Bianca is, of course, best known for winning season 6 of Drag Race, and she is about to embark on a brand new world tour starting next month. Hi, Bianca Del Rio.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you today? What's going on today for you?
I'm doing well, just plotting and planning everything leading up to the tour. There's never enough time when you're traveling on the road because I've committed to doing this first leg of the tour, which is 3 months, I think. So I'll be out till May all over the USA and Canada. So packing for that, it's a process that takes a couple of days. So aside from all of the drag that you have to pack and all of the extra stuff you have to, in case of an emergency drag moments, you have to pack, as I call it, my boy clothes and shoes and socks.
Yes.
And it's not that glamorous. So it's just plotting and getting all of that together before I head out and preparing to be thrown to the world, you know, because you're out for quite some time, and it's night after night after night after night. So I'm excited about it, but this process is a little daunting. I'm not going to lie.
You know, I actually saw you in Provincetown on Halloween, Spooky Bear. I was there.
Oh, yes.
And you were phenomenal.
Well, you have good taste, Jess.
Yes.
Really good taste.
I've been telling people Spooky Bear was the literal highlight of my... I've been to Provincetown tons, and I want to talk about you back in the day there, but Spooky Bear in particular, with a Bianca Del Rio headlining the final night, I mean, what else do we need?
Well, how lucky to get to do it. I've been out there since, let's say, about 2014. I had been out there. And the first time I was out in Provincetown, I did a long run. I was out there for, I think, 2 months or something crazy like that, which was daunting because at the time I had just won Drag Race and I was traveling on the weekends. So I do my show during the week. And then on the weekends, I was heading out to go and do other gigs all around the country, the world, wherever. So that was daunting. Getting in and out of there with that little airport and with lots of drag queen luggage is not the most ideal. So then we figured out the ferry worked well, but that took a lot longer. So the whole process.
Yeah, but the ferry's gonna make you puke.
Oh, of course it does, especially the way I drink. So I experienced all of that the first time around. And then things got even easier for me when they said, we'd like to have you come back. And it's not in the summer. I'm like, boo-boo, ideal. It was all about scheduling. And they said, come for Spooky Bear Weekend. So that was actually my first time there at that time of year. And I must confess, if any of the bears are listening, Jess, bears are the best audience. I always put bears at the top of the list, straight girls suit under it, and then I deal with the gays. So that's my order of best audience. So it was really, really a lot of fun to get to be there, and I'm glad that you experienced it with me.
So I know like the main tent poles of the areas of the country where you've really spent the most amount of time. You grew up in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Which I'm very passionate about. I've lived there for short stints of my life. Obviously, you lived in New York, and now you're in Palm Springs, which I want to understand like how how it ends in Palm Springs. But you've traveled the world, you've played Carnegie Hall, but what I really want to talk to you about is your time on Fire Island as a Fire Island queen.
Oof.
I can do an hour on this.
Well, honey, let me tell you, I those years, I don't know how I functioned because it's not the glamour that you think it is. You have to hustle in New York City. And so I always find there's a great age bracket to be there. I had gone back to New York when I was 30 at the time. So those 30 to 40 were my years that I was back in New York City, and you hustle. So I had a day job during the day, and then I would perform at night in the local gay bars. And then obviously when summer comes around, you're heading out to Fire Island if you're lucky. And the way Fire Island's, worked out, you have the Fire Island Pines, and then you've got Cherry Grove. So it was kind of like, all right, great. Let's go out there. Let's figure this out. I went out there one summer. Towards the end of the summer, I was called by a gal who ran the place called Cherries in the Grove. And she says, listen, I hear you're funny. I need somebody to come in. I need you to do this. The pay is $200 and you're going to come out and do 2 hours and yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, well, I don't really work for $200. She goes, well, that's what I'm paying. And I thought, you got to love a bitch who's straightforward. So she says, why don't you come out? And if I like you and you're good, I'll give you more money. And if not, we call it even. And so that was my first time venturing out there. And I had the best time out there. But the trek is getting out to Fire Island. So you're in the city, you take a train from Penn Station that gets you to somewhere in Long Island, depending on where you are. And then from there, you have to take a little van that gets you over to the ferry depot to get on the ferry to then get to the island of the gay people that you avoid when you're living in Manhattan. So it was kind of like, the end of Funny Girl. You've got to do all these things to get to Nikki Arnstein. And it was quite the challenge, but I don't know how I made it all those years. And then making it back to work during the week at 8:30 in the morning. So there's been some magical moments there. Some that I remember, some that I don't remember. But I guess that's the special thing about Fire Island.
At the height of your Fire Island career, how many days a week were you performing at? Like, were you doing like 4 nights and then going back to the city?
Oh, no. Well, what it was is I was doing like 4 nights in the city, and then I would go and do 3 nights. I'd do Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Because what happened was in New York at the time, drag queens weren't necessarily working on the weekends because the bars were already full. So they didn't need us to do a show. So my nights in New York were Monday night, was a Tuesday night, Wednesday, Thursday. And then I could go out to Fire Island on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But I was the queen of only going if I was working and then got right back, because you get lost in the madness when you're there. So I often said, I got to get back. I got to get back. So those ferries run late, and you get on that late ferry and then head back home and head back in the city to be back at work again to do your show again on Monday night. So those years, youth. That's all it is being young.
Because I've interviewed a few of the present day Cherry Grove queens who perform at Cherry's. Yeah. And I know that, so the owner that you're referring to, Jackie, the one who a terrifying woman, very nice. I
love her.
Like, she smiles at me, but like literally never says a word. She gives me anything I want, but never says hello.
Okay, that's Jackie.
But she knows it's an intimidating situation.
Yes,
but I know that,
I love her.
I know that her goal, like, it's a successful night when the Pines boys all make the trek over to Cherry Grove. Yeah. That is considered a successful night. So could you sense that was going to be the goal?
First and foremost, Jackie was so supportive of me in those years of like, okay, what do you want to do? How can we make this work? And was very cooperative with me. And the tricky thing about the Pines, because I had worked in the Pines as well. I was hired and fired many times in the Pines because they switched owners so quickly with all of the venues. It was the Blue Whale at one point, then it was called something else, and then there was a pool show. So I had done all these different moments over in the Pines and had been hired and fired and sometimes working both at the same time. That's just how it was. As soon as they put me outside by the pool, noise complaints. So always an issue. So she often was interested in having, talent and having a show. And so she often would ask, what is it that you want to do? What do you think is going to work? And it's great to go to the Pines and see all those pretty boys and hang out and have your drinks, but you need entertainment. So they always end up finding the drag queen. So they would venture over on those particular nights and see who was there and what was going on. So you'd have the day trippers lasting till the very end, and then the gays from the Pines coming over that would then make up your audience, So it was brilliant timing. And in the Pines, if I'm not mistaken, they weren't really doing any shows on those nights. They were parties, whether it be, sort of a foam party, underwear party, let's get naked and drink. Whereas in the Grove, we had entertainment. So she was very nurturing during those years and so helpful all those years. And what was so amazing about basically everybody in New York at that time, when I did Drag Race, I auditioned for the show and I got on the show and I was going to go away. And, you're supposed to be very secretive about it. You're not supposed to tell anyone. And I went to every bar that I was working at and I said, listen, here is an opportunity for me. I could be gone a week. I could be gone 6 weeks. I think it was possibly 6 to 8 weeks of how long we were supposed to film. I said, but I got to go and do this for myself. And I promise you, if you let me go, I will come back and work for you at the same fee for as long as I can until this kicks off. And every one of them, Jackie included, was like, got you back. I got you back. So I left for 5.5 weeks to film and I came back. They took me back and I worked with them, let's say from the end of July until the show started airing in the city. But Jackie, obviously, I finished the rest of the summer and couldn't have been more supportive and couldn't have been greater to me. So I'm always grateful to all of New York City nightlife that let me go away and do it and let me have my job back until the show started airing. So I had a good run.
Going back to Fire Island, what were some of the crazier things you witnessed?
Oh, God. Well, it depends on where I was and what time of day, In the morning, you were safe. because everybody was still asleep from the night before. Lunch is where things got a little rough, because people start drinking. It's such a relaxed environment. I remember I come from New Orleans, which is a lot like Cherry Grove, I would say. Whereas, people are just shuffling at their own pace. People are drinking and having a good time. You start with your Bloody Marys, you start with your mimosas. I would say it's that afternoon before dinner. You would lose the people that were ready to go to bed, the people that have been at the beach all day, the people that have experienced the day trippers, they're out. That's when the freaks would come out. I would say it's between that dinner break and late night where the magic would happen. And I have seen lesbians throw furniture out of a window. I have seen fags break up, get back together. I have seen people rip up a bar because they lost a bag of cocaine. I have seen drag queens that passed down the dressing room and never woke up. Actually, that was me. There was one time, this is the best. I went to a party. I drank excessively the entire day. And then I woke up in the dressing room at Cherry's after it was locked up. So I had to call someone from there, say, how do I get out of Cherry's? And if you know Cherry's, there's like a little barn door on the side for the outside entrance. I had to climb under there and get out for the next morning because I had no idea how I ended up there. But I'm thinking, in my mind, I'm shit-faced and thought, yep, let me go to Cherry's. Climbed under there and got into the dressing room and took a nap. Jackie says, you're fucking crazy. So that's my life. That's what I experienced. But it was always a good time. I just went back recently for the Miss Fire Island pageant last year, and it was a hoot. Had the best time, but I do need some time to function outside of it and get back to normal, and then I can go and experience it again because it does take the life out of you.
On a personal note, I actually met you briefly out of drag, maybe last March. Once a year, they do a Cherry Grove in town party at the Monster.
Oh yes.
And you came through, and I was able to meet you, and it was lovely. And I was so touched because I know your history with Fire Island. I found that to be so beautiful. Did you just happen to be in New York that day?
I was in New York, and I was meeting up with my friend Logan Hardcore, who was a performer that worked at Cherry Grove and did the pool show for many years. And we had met up for lunch that day, and we were going to see actually Jinx Monsoon in Chicago that evening. So we had a little bit of time, and I said, what's going on? I don't even know New York anymore. Where's there to go? She goes, you know what? There's a party with Fire Island Gang is getting together. I'm like, sign me up. So we went down there and got to see everybody because I don't normally get to see everyone when I go in town because it's kind of in and out is usually the process for me. So it was great to see everyone that was there, Dan Romano and all the gang, and we got to schmooze and cut up and take photos. So yeah, it all just kind of worked out. So I enjoy those little reunions, especially if everyone's fun and no one asks me for money. That's a good thing, because you often go, oh God, do I owe you money too? There's a lot of that happens. But no, it was great to see everybody, and it's always a treat. It's always a treat. They've always been so welcoming. That Grove is a very special place.
Now, going back to your time growing up in New Orleans, I know eventually you moved into the French Quarter, but what neighborhood did you actually go to high school in?
Oh, on the West Bank. So there's the East Bank and the West Bank in New Orleans, and I was across the river. The river was the big thing. So I was on the West Bank, grew up there in Gretna, Louisiana, went to school in Harvey, Louisiana, and then had enough sense to move to the French Quarter. That's where the gays and the life was. So I lived in the French Quarter for quite a few years. I mean, it's so hard when you get to a certain age, you can't remember how long you were there. It seems like a short period of time, but it was a long period of time. But even when I was living on the West Bank, you went over to the French Quarter to party. That's where everybody was. That's where the gay bars were. And that's where I met most of my friends. And obviously where my drag career started in 1996.
It's surprising.
Which is so scary.
It's surprising to me, knowing the history of New Orleans, it's surprising to me that there really was a time where drag really wasn't accepted in New Orleans, considering New Orleans is such a progressive liberal city, particularly for the South. And I know that there also was a time where gay guys weren't accepting of drag queens.
Totally. No, it's a hard world to imagine. It's like trying to imagine the world without social media. Try to imagine the world without access to all of this madness. It's like it was just different times. In the gay community, guys were not interested, so to speak, with anyone that did drag. I mean, you were definitely an outcast within your own community if you did drag.
Why do you think that was?
Because I guess it might have been some crazy idea that you're not masculine of some sort. I mean, who knows?
I think so. I think you're hitting on something, and I wonder if it's just basic misogyny.
Could easily be. I think that they looked at us in a different way. But also, to be fair, I looked at it, many of my friends that were in relationships or basically seeking relationships by being in drag. For me, it was just a job. It was just a business. This was no pathway to anything else. So I would go do my shows in drag, and talk to the people that were there and then get out of drag. And nobody asked any questions. Nobody wanted to know who I was. No one wanted to know what I looked like out of drag. So it was a different world. And there were certain bars that you weren't allowed in if you were in drag. There was a leather bar, Rawhide, that was on the corner there. And I don't know what the policy is now. But back then, it was, this is a man's man night. So everybody there was leather into this particular type of men, which is so funny because it's usually bears who are now a majority of my audience. But at the time, it was looked at, we're there, this is our space to do this. Like, there were bars that we could go to in drag, but it wasn't as widely accepted. And what's so funny now is I can't go down the street or go anywhere in New Orleans without somebody screaming, hey, can we get a selfie? There's a fag on every corner that wants to know you or wants to talk to you. So it was a different time. And I think that I'm not going to say Drag Race changed it, but I think that once drag is in people's living rooms, it just kind of humanize it, So
Yeah.
we are a little more celebrated. And I don't think a lot of the younger queens realize how lucky they are to have what they have and to have the exposure and to have, and in many ways, this huge acceptance.
Now, I want to pose a thought to you.
Oh God.
So I know Madonna was hugely influential for you, myself as well. Obviously, Bob the Drag Queen is on this world tour with Madonna.
Yes.
Now, we're going to live in reality. You have the career you do. You are the Bianca Del Rio that has the ability to go out on her own world tour.
Yeah.
Had Madonna reached out to you, suppose there was a relationship. So suppose it was you who she had called to do that Pride show several years ago, and you had built that relationship with Madonna, and you had gotten the call, like Bob did, the offer, open for me, be part of my show.
Yeah.
Is that an appealing gig to you?
Well, I'm going to be very blunt, Jess, and say this is that I am all about business. And I can say that because I wasn't asked. Bob was, and kudos to Bob going and doing it. I mean, it's like an amazing opportunity. But I would look at the business aspect of it for me. I mean, I had already had stuff in the works, so it's very hard for me to say, and I'm not saying, oh, I would turn down Madonna. I just mean that I would go, what are you paying? What does this involve? How much of my life is this going to be? How am I showcased in the show? I would ask those particular questions, and it's no disregard or some hate towards her. I mean, she's all business as it is. But on a personal side, as a young gay boy, I would probably say, yes! I want to go. I just want to be in her orbit. I want to find out how she works. I want to know what makes her tick. So that side of it would be interesting, but I would have to look at the business side of it and say, hey, if it works out in your schedule, I'm a firm believer in timing, and if something works, it's great. And one of the biggest obstacles I had in my life was Drag Race, which I did at 38 years old, 37, 38 years old. Didn't think that it would open so many doors, but the hustle is what's kind of kept me in that doorway. So for me, it would have to say, how would I be showcased? And, Bob and I are different talents. I mean, obviously we're both comedians and stuff, but he's more musically oriented than I am. And I think it's an amazing.
Yeah, she's got him in the leather chaps doing the choreography to Don't Tell Me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's brilliant. And I love every minute of it. And we've chatted, since Bob's been on the road. But I purposely don't ask those questions about her because I know everybody is asking all of those questions. I get the best advice I could give him. I said, write everything down. Write everything down. You think you're going to remember it, but you won't. I said, just write it down so you can either relive it later in life or sell it and make a book. But no, I think it's amazing. And as I said, I don't want to sound like a cunt, but I would have to look at it professionally and say, hey, would this work out? How would I be showcased and how much you paying? And what, how would I resonate with the audience? Because if you're there doing that, they're not coming to see me. They're coming to see her. So how are you mixed into the show? And if it made sense, but my little gayness inside would be like, yes, Queen, Madonna, woo! Yeah. Sing my songs, girl. So
having seen your full show, and to me, you are a stand-up comic. To me, just having
totally.
having seen tons of drag,
Yeah.
having seen you, having seen the old guard like Lady Bunny and
Oh yeah.
Coco Peru upstate in New York.
Oh,
Like I've seen Dina Martina in Provincetown.
love Dina. Yes.
I feel that I can speak with some authority here. Obviously, you're a drag queen. You're dressed up in drag, but your
Oh yeah.
act, you're a stand-up comedian.
Yes, oh totally. It's I'm a stand-up comedian who happens to be in drag. And everyone you just named, Lady Bunny, Dina Martina, Coco Peru, I simply love and adore and have such respect for all of them. And I know the terms icons and legendary gets used quite often, but I say what's spectacular about them is I knew them, and as I was explaining earlier, the world without social media, I knew who they were in the 90s, and I still see them in high regard because they are still at it. They are still working. They are still being booked. They still have the talent, if not even more entertaining now than ever. So I respect those people that have been hustling all these years. It's all about the hustle and still doing it and still brilliantly gifted and fun. So I love them, but I can't do what they do. That's never been my niche. And for me, I always wanted to do stand up, and it just so happens that I'm in drag. So whenever you are talking about it, you're probably one of the first people, Jess, to actually assess it and look at it for what it is, because most people go, "Oh, it's a drag show." No, I'm not lip syncing. No, I'm not singing a song. No, I'm not dancing around the stage. It's not that type of setup. So I am grateful that I have been able to do all of this kind of stuff, but also staying true and staying into my lane as this is what I want. This is my path.
Have you ever performed stand up as Roy? Like no drag?
Oh God, when they lost my luggage, yeah, I've had that happen. Yeah. Once I was on a cruise ship and something happened and I couldn't do it. And then once I was in kind of half drag because they lost my luggage at the airport. It didn't come until a later flight.
And how did it go?
Well, it's fine because I'm dealing with a different type of audience. You have to understand that people that are coming to see me know who I am from where I'm from. So they get it. Whereas if I was just this average person on the street and they were coming to see me, or the average person on the street doesn't come to see me, where it's like, oh, Bianca doesn't have her drag, it wouldn't mean anything. So to people, they understand my little journey, so to speak, and know where I come from. So to not have my drag also gives me a half hour more material to talk about. Because we always say, what's a drag queen without her luggage? A man, a big fucking man. So yes. That's always an issue, is luggage, and I do get horrified by it, but I have done it out of necessity.
Do you see, 20 years from now, do you think that is where you'll end up? Like basically
Dead?
No, God forbid.
I mean,
no. No, I mean like 50 when you're sick of like this is a lot of work. I mean in this interview this is a lot to deal with.
Oh,
I mean I know
now.
you're quite efficient, but do you imagine that eventually you'll evolve out of the drag persona and just be, you can perform under the name Bianca Del Rio, but out of drag, just the same act?
Oh, well, yes. I mean, I have learned not to try to predict the future. I've learned that. But I also know that everything runs its course and everything has its time. And so with each tour that I've done, this is now my 6th solo tour that I will be traveling the world with, is that, there's a new set of issues, a new set of ailments, a new set of longevity and stamina that comes with it. So for me, I try to make it as easy as possible for myself physically and mentally, but it never really is. So as long as I'm still enjoying it, though, I have to look at the bigger picture and go, okay, this is what I wanted to do, and this is the path that I wanted to take. If it was easy, I'd be suspicious. So I'd be like, no, this is too easy. It shouldn't be easy. And my words to the team that I travel with, our production manager and our sales merch and my assistant, and I mean, it's not that many, but the few people that do travel with me, I said, no one should work harder than I, and no one should make more money than I. So it's what it is. I'm the show monkey, and it comes at a price. So I've been able to kind of adjust things to my real life now that I've gotten older. And after traveling the world so many times, I've figured out what makes sense and what makes it easier. So it's not extremely difficult. It comes with its challenges, but the way I've assessed things now is just, instead of looking at the challenge as it's over, is that I know how to handle the challenges better. I'm not surprised when they show up, but I do think it will run its course, and I will say, hey, maybe I don't want to do this anymore, and I'm okay with that. I'm not thinking this is the end all be all. I mean, hopefully I'll still have more years in me, But you never really know. You
Yeah.
never really know where he is. I'm sure if you ask Coco Peru or Lady Bunny, did they see themselves still doing this, 30, 40 years? I think Coco Peru is celebrating 35 years of performing, which is an amazing thing to think about. So I just don't know. I don't know. I can never predict it.
Outside of the hypothetical Madonna scenario that I
Oh,
posed to
yeah.
you,
Yeah.
is there anything that you've said no to? Like anything major that you turned down? Well, I mean,
well,
like I know that you've said you won't go back on Drag Race for All Stars. So
oh,
like
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
but beyond that,
Well, yeah, beyond that, I mean, there's things that you've put yourself out for, that you've auditioned for, that you didn't get, in the end, but then the show get canceled. So but no, overall, not necessarily. There's nothing that I haven't really said no to. It takes a lot for me to say no, because I'm one of these people that are willing to try anything, even if it's low money, and you
yeah,
go, let's go see what this is like, because you never know. You can have a great time or you can have a horrible time, and you can then use it in your act. So
yeah.
it's all worked out well. That's why when I post dates of where I'm traveling and where I'm going, people are like, "You're going there?" I go, "I will go anywhere." Anywhere, because you never know what to expect. Sometimes they're the best audiences. Sometimes they get a bad rap by the world. And other times it's just so fucked up that you can then use it in the show. So it's all win-win for me. So I don't really think there's anything aside from Drag Race was the only thing that I've said no to, and that had a lot to do with the format of the show and timing.
Are you familiar with this show? It's sort of a phenomenon right now. It's airing on Peacock called The Traitors.
Oh, yes. Well, I've heard everybody's talking about it. I have not watched it yet. No, and I love Alan Cumming. He's a friend of mine, and he's wonderful, so sweet. But someone just recently sent me a message that says, "You need to watch," and then the second text was, "You need to be on it." So
Yes.
I need to do some investigative work. Once I get out of show mode and that I'm actually functioning and sailing, I'll be able to catch up on all of it.
So Peppermint, they basically take a bunch of different people from different competition shows, but also Housewives, and Peppermint was on from Drag Race. And yes, it's hosted by Alan Cumming, and it's all very campy and fabulous. You actually could possibly win the Traitors, and I think like, I did an episode with a friend. So we were sort of fan casting the Traitors,
Oh, God.
and I said,
Okay.
anybody from Drag Race, they have to ask Bianca Del Rio.
Let's do it. Sign me up. I'm going to call Al. I'll text Alan today.
Text him today, and I don't know how what
Let's see what he says.
because you're the smartest in the
Well,
in the
I'd
crew.
be willing to go into. Let me tell you, experiencing Drag Race when I did was a great experience, and I didn't expect it. Obviously, you don't know what's going to happen with your career with this platform, an amazing platform, and in my act, I make jokes about it and talk shit about the whole process. But honestly, the exposure and the platform that you're given is surreal, and it totally shifted my life. But what I thoroughly enjoyed the most at the time was being amongst the queens, being in the room, and some people find it very stressful. I didn't find it stressful. I thought it was so much fun, and some great memories, some great friendships were created from that. So I live to be catty and nasty in a room full of queens. Sign me up. Where there's quiet and silence, I will create mischief. I guarantee it.
When you were a baby drag queen, what was some of the worst advice you received?
Oh God, was it people wanted to put you in certain categories in the South, to be a drag queen and to have any notability or to be considered legit, let's say, you were expected to do a pageant, and enter. In the South, it's a big fucking deal, these drag pageants. And there's different variations of the pageants that they would have. But many of the older queens was like, you need to do it. You need to do it. If you want a career in this, you need to do it. And what ends up happening is I saw many of my friends at the time get molded into this particular type of creature that was like the only way to be accepted. My issue with the pageantry system was simply that every year there's a new bitch. So it became this game of like, all right, so you get a year of notoriety, a year to go perform in every other club, like whatever. So it wasn't necessarily showcasing their talents or creating them as individuals. They kind of became these Stepford wives of this pageantry system.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was the worst advice. And so I recently have gone back to New Orleans for a friend's birthday roast, and she was one of the queens. My friend Tiffany Alexander was one of the queens who insisted I do a pageant. And I proudly will say, I never entered one pageant. And the only pageant I did was Drag Race. And that's the only pageant that mattered because that actually elevated your career. None of these other bitches that did those pageants back then made any money or had a career. They're still in debt over this shit. So I was grateful that I chose the alternate route.
I know that when you were in New York, your day job was on Broadway in the theater. You worked in costuming.
Yeah.
Is this where you first met Chita Rivera?
Oh, yes. Well, the crazy thing is I met Chita Rivera in 1993 when she was doing Kiss of the Spider Woman in New York. And I remember I had gotten a ticket to see the show, and I had no idea what the show was going to be about. You know, this is New York at the time when tickets, I think it might have been a $20 ticket that was available that day. So I went to the show, and as I said, pre-social media, you know, I knew the name Chita Rivera. And as I'm sitting there reading the bio, I'm like, oh my God, okay, okay, original West Side Story, okay, Bye Bye Birdie, oh, she's done this.
Original Velma in Chicago.
Oh, totally,
Yeah.
like the Velma. So I'm reading all of this, and I'm thinking, okay, so she's got to be in her 60s at this point. I'm thinking, there's going to be this old woman that's going to come out on stage, and these people are just going to pick her up and twirl her. Honey, was I ever so wrong? Like I think the best expression someone used was lightning in heels is what I would call it. There is just something about specific people that just have this, I don't want to say aura, but just this amazing ability to have all eyes on them for the right reasons. You know, we all have that relative that's an asshole that we look at for the wrong reasons. But she had this electrifying energy that I felt at that time, at 17 or 18 years old. I thought this entire show was being done just for me. You know, she has that connection and that magic. So I saw the show many times after that, and then I got to meet her makeup artist, Kate Best, who's a brilliant makeup artist who does J-Lo's makeup, Vanessa Williams. Also, she did Vanessa Williams when Vanessa Williams was in Spider-Woman at the time, because Vanessa replaced Chita Rivera. But in the game of it is that I met her, and I, at the time, thought I was going to be a makeup artist. So I was asking her all these questions, and also had this huge admiration for Chita. And then she introduced me to Chita, which then for the next few years, I think I saw the show for the next year about 20 times, and would go in Chita's dressing room and chat with Chita. And she could not have been kinder, warmer, nicer, lovely, aside from being this mega talent, was extremely humble and so generous. And so we'd remained friends throughout the years. And then when I moved back to New York at 30, I was working at Barbara Matera Costume Shop, and she was doing this 2005. She was doing a show called A Dancer's Life, and we made her costumes for that. So we reconnected then, along with her lovely assistant, Rosie, who has been with her since, can't even tell you how many years. So we reconnected then. And so anytime I was in New York, I could catch her performing, whether it be on Broadway and The Visit, or getting to see her at the Carlisle performing. I was there. She even performed out here, and I got to see her last year. Was the last time that I got to see her, which was out here in California. I got to catch her act on a Sunday matinee at 2 p.m., her solo show. So just truly one of the best people, and also just one of the realest people, you know, to be that gifted and to be that wonderful. She didn't have to be so generous, and that she was, you know, and for that, you just go, girl, you learn so much from someone like that, you know?
I was lucky enough to see her last summer. Our mutual friend, Daniel Nardicchio.
Oh, yeah.
He brought her out to Fire
Fire
Island.
Island.
She performed at the Ice Palace with her daughter.
Yes,
And
yes.
it was amazing.
Yes. No, and she was not afraid of working. I mean, she was 90 years old last year. She just turned 91 when she passed. And what's so insane is that, you know, on paper, you go, she's a 91-year-old woman. Of course, that she's lived a great life and how wonderful. But the other side of it, you go, there was just something about her that I thought she wasn't going anywhere. You know, that it wasn't, she was always going to be there. So that's been the most shocking and hard part, is full of life, working up until the end, and just one of the realest, most generous people. And she didn't have to be. You know how sometimes there's a person who's done absolutely nothing in their lives and they're the biggest fucking cunt? Well, they have nothing to back it up, whereas she had all of it to back it up, and she was nothing but generous. I mean, that goes to show you that's the kind of life I want to lead.
Now, another legend, the person who I think you are most compared to, is obviously Joan Rivers.
Oh, God, how lucky. How lucky to even be considered or put in the same category. Come on now.
Now, I want to talk about a couple things. You obviously did In Bed with Joan.
Oh, yeah.
Which I've seen like all of those episodes on YouTube. Like they really range in the level of insanity in those shows. So
also the randomness of the guests. The randomness. Yes. The day that I filmed, there was the guy before me was Neve from Catfish on MTV.
Neve Schulman, yes.
Okay. And then after me was Leanne Rimes. Okay, randomly, random. That was the day. And actually, Leanne Rimes was the last interview in bed with Joan. So I was the second to last. So Leanne was after me, and that was the last of the series.
And this was filmed in Melissa's basement?
Real house, real house, real house. What was crazy is I don't think I was living in Los Angeles at the time. I got the call because a guy who I adore by the name Tony Tripoli worked for Joan and was a writer for her on Fashion Police. And he was very close with Joan. And Tony and I had done a cruise at some point many, many years in the early 2000s. So he knew of me and knew how much I loved Joan and said to me, hey, would you like to come and do this little show she's doing called In Bed with Joan? I'm going to warn you. It's, YouTube, it's this. And I'm like, sign me up. Yes, yes, yes. Let's do it. At the time I had management who didn't think it was the best idea, which is why I don't longer have that manager. But basically it was like, oh, well, Joan's not going to pay you. This is not going to happen. Well, I said, I don't give a fuck. I'm going and I'm doing it. So I flew out to Los Angeles and you were given instructions of where to go. And you go and we pull up and it really is Melissa's house at the time. And you really do go down to the basement and it really was all set up in the house to film in the bedroom, which is completely insane.
The most insane thing about Joan Rivers is she performed the night before she went in to have like the throat surgery. She performed at the Laurie Beachman theater. She was notorious for being that. She would always go there and try out new material, which was the best. If you had the chance to see her there, it was always raw and uncensored and erotic, and I lived. I saw her kind of bomb there.
Oh yeah, well that was where she would go to try out everything new. She really would, and I thought, how genius! And someone of her level didn't need to do that, but did, and went and tried out new material. And what was so insane about the whole process? I remember I was in Australia when she passed, and somehow once again, like a Chita Rivera, I just thought, no. I mean, there's something about these strong women that you just think, of course, inevitably something would happen, but you just never think because of their work stamina and who they were as people. I didn't think of them as an age. I didn't think of them as, Joan was in her 80s and Chita in her 90s. I didn't think of that. I just thought they are strong, unbelievable bitches who are working continuously. They ain't going nowhere. So it was so shocking that all of that happened in the way that it kind of trickled with the Jones situation. And also just a huge loss for the world. I mean, we need that voice in the world now. And the fact that everything is so PC and everything you can't say. I would just love to hear what she would have to say about the current climate we're in, from Donald Trump to sensitive fucking people.
That's the thing. She was famously friends with, they were iconic New Yorkers. I would love to know her take on Trump, the pandemic, and now obviously what's going on in the Middle East. Like I would be very curious.
Truly.
It's funny you mention Tony Tripoli.
Yeah,
he used to be close with Kathy Griffin. I don't know if he wrote for. Was he a writer for her?
You know what? I don't know the extent of their relationship. I'm not sure if they were friends and then he started writing for her, or if he wrote for her and then became friends. That was all before I knew him.
I was first introduced to him because he was one of her close friends on My Life on the D-List.
Yes,
he was one of the
Yes.
friends. And then, of course, the irony that Kathy Griffin took over for Joan on Fashion Police, and she didn't want any writers, and like Joan had 10. Like I know some of the writers, and that was, your face is kind of saying it all.
Well, I'm just saying that if Joan Rivers had 10 writers, you need 40. You need 40, girl. I'm sorry. I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, and I think that when you're dealing with something on the level of that type of show, is that, pop culture, there's so much happening and there's so many names and there's so many people that it's like, yeah, you need to have that team of people that are on that kind of stuff. That I would never shy away from that if I was in that situation, And she wasn't afraid to deliver anything, which was what made it so spectacular. But yes, that's really important to have a group of people, especially a group of people that understand your voice, and they understood her and knew that she'd be willing to do it, deliver it, and make a great joke about it. So never think that you're above people and think, I don't need anyone. Girl. Yeah.
Do you work with writers?
No, not with this stuff, because now I've done like TV game show things like that where they of course go over everything with you. But in this world, no, it's just one of those things where it's the one time, because it's not television, you're not censored, and because you're not limited, the people that are coming to see you want you to be nasty and, hateful. Yes, but if I were to do something that were to be filmed or something that would be on a larger scale, obviously there's parameters that you have to work in. which is horrible for a drag queen. I mean, a comedian, so to speak. But yeah, I just find it easiest to do to just have that connection with an audience. So yeah, we don't deal with that aspect of it.
I love your approach because, like, obviously, most entertainers do meet and greets, and
Yeah.
you've kind of incorporated, because having seen you in P Town, I mean, you were headlining Town Hall. A lot of it is crowd work,
Totally.
which is the most difficult thing to do successfully.
Well, I think it depends on who you ask. You know, some people say they prefer more show than crowd work, and some people go, "I live for the moments that don't know what's going to happen." The thing was, in the very beginning, like I said, this is like my sixth tour. In the beginning, I did everything scripted. I said, because working in bars in New Orleans, you're doing a lot of crowd work. So I thought, well, now that I'm legitimate and now that I'm presenting a show, and thinking in my head, oh, what would Lady Bunny do? What would Coco Peru do? Who are, Coco Peru and Varla Jean Merman are two brilliant performers that are by the book. I mean, by the book. You can look at the script and you can follow along. They are on it word for word, which was not necessarily the way that I've ever worked. I mean, I was working in bars with drunk people in the middle of the night. So I had a different skill set of what I was doing. But when I did my first show, I thought I've got to shy away from that because that's bar show. I'm moving on. And so I did stick with a scripted set, which didn't give me the opportunities to be free. And I started to realize as it went on, I was kind of trapped. So with each tour, more and more of the audience interaction kind of became a part of it. And then I started to realize, oh, well, this is what I do. And this is what people want from me. So this is how it kind of like evolved for me, especially, with Drag Race in particular, they were all like, read me, make fun of me. And, out of context, you can't do that. But if you create a space within the show to do it, I think it works well. And that's just one of the things that I love to do. And some people think, oh, well, that's not much. Or other people think, oh, my God, it's so difficult. It's just what is in my little wheelhouse of fun.
But when you do the meet and greets, I think like you specifically do, because an artist can choose, I want to do them before the show or after the show. Yeah. Do you particularly want them before the show? Because these are the people at the front of the room.
Oh, totally. You can
totally.
use the people.
Yeah, you can use it.
You can use it to your advantage. And also, as a drag queen, it's where I look my most freshest. It's before the show. And I'd rather get in the monkey suit first, do all the photos, do this. So when I'm done with the show, I can take it off and then I'm good for the night. We have had it where I've done double shows on a night where I had meet and greets in between. Oh, nightmare. I've also done it after the show. It's a fucking nightmare. So what works best for me, I should say, and the right way for myself and for my team is to do it before the show. It's a win-win completely for me. And I'm just always grateful for the people that want to come and see you at a meet and greet. It's, 150 to 200 people a night. And, you get to know them, you schmooze with them, you get the picture. And what's so great is that they like you enough to show up early. How grateful and lucky I am, So it's a long night, but it's the best time to do it.
We talked a lot about the legends who came before, Dina Martina. Now, they, in the past, maybe when Drag Race was really at its peak, they've kind of lamented they're never going to have the Drag Race opportunity because now it's targeted for like 22-year-olds who are already stars on TikTok. Do you think, I mean, this is a little bit of a ridiculous question, but The Golden Bachelor was very successful.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a universe in which they do like a golden drag race and get all of these heroes and we can really put on a fucking show?
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Are you asking, do I think it's a good idea? Yes and yes and yes. Do I think it'll happen? I have no fucking clue. What's crazy to think about, if you put it all into perspective, the people that create the show, including RuPaul, are all in the same age bracket. So they know that these people exist. They know that these people are still working. They know that these people are still talented. I just don't know how that translates to the world. How does that translate to us, to me as a drag performer / drag lover, drag entertainment? Yes, yes, and yes. How fucking brilliant would that be to have Coco Peru, Jackie Beat, Sherry Vine on television, Bunny in any situation, lip sync her, pull her out of the vault. Like any of that would be amazing. I just don't know if that's how it works with television nowadays. I mean, but then here we are, we could still say the same thing about, can you imagine pitching the Golden Girls? Like all of a sudden, we've got these broads that are old, that have worked everywhere, these actresses that have been around, and then it becomes a huge success. So I would I don't want to give up on Drag Race and think it may not happen. Maybe not so much in a competition aspect, but to showcase their talents would be amazing because really can't compete within each other because they're all so different yet so amazing. I don't know if lip syncing would play the part. And maybe that's one of the reasons why they haven't done it, because the format doesn't work the show. But I do hope that possibly one day that they could experience the magic of being on television, and also that these queens should be celebrated. I think it's one of the reasons why Sherry Vine, who's a good friend of mine, comes with me on the road and opens for me before the show, is because she was one of the nicest people I've ever met. She's extremely talented and lovely, and she paid me to say that. But one of the first people I met in New York that was so generous to me when I got there, welcomed me with open arms, and we've been friends ever since. And so since I've had this Drag Race moment, I go, here, come and experience this and share it. And people leave there going, oh my God, she's amazing. She's brilliant. Like I had no idea who she was because the mindset is here, So I could only hope, whether it be Drag Race or in some form showcase it. And until that happens, I think it's our jobs as performers and drag queens to celebrate these people and remind people who they are. That's our job, to educate the children, as they say.
This has been fabulous.
Well, thank you for having me.
I love you.
Appreciate it.
I hope I can come see you on your tour. I mean, what do you, any final thoughts? Anything you want to say that I haven't asked you?
Well, no, just that I'm on the road now with my new show, Dead Inside, and you can find all ticket information at thebiancadelrio.com. I will be in New Jersey. I will be in New York, Brooklyn at the King's Theater. I think it's April 24th is my date that I'm going to be there. I believe, is it April 24th? February 29th, so I am wrong. So February 29th, I will be there in New York for this go around. And, I'm just so grateful that I get to work after all these years. It's been quite a wild ride. And I say, come and join me, come see the show and see the madness that they've created.
Do you have any plans? Hopefully, like, I can see you in, again in Provincetown or even Fire Island. Like, I love when you do the small.
This is the first leg of this particular tour, so everything else in between, it's just kind of, we're moving all parts right now, so we're trying to figure out UK and Asia and Australia. So once that stuff gets set, then I have the opportunities to fill in every place else. So in the meantime, I'm kind of in limbo, and I'm committed for the next few months with this chunk of dates. But as soon as I have those openings, I'll let you know.
This has been so fun.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you. Thank you, Jess. Talk to you soon.
Everyone, please follow me, JessXNYC, on Instagram. Go over to the YouTube channel, Hot Takes and Deep Dives. Throw in my name. All of these interviews are available on YouTube to watch, and we will see you soon.